Well, hello there again, friends and family. Hope all of y'all are doing fine, and this finds y'all well and safe with your families and your loved ones. Now, I know all of y'all, as you saw from the introduction there, have seen the pictures of the bare shelves, no meat available, whether it was beef, pork, chicken, bacon and sausage and what have you. There was just literally thousands upon thousands of the same pictures of bare shelves, whether it was Walmart, Safeway, Publix, Winn-Dixie, A&P, H-E-B, Aldi's, or what have you. It was all across America. And that was true back in the beginning of April, going through April, May, and even a week or so into June. But is that true right now? What you're looking right now is the meat case over at one of my local supermarkets that I just love, and that's Superfoods here on the east side of Tyson. And I went there June the 17th. And the title of that video was, I had no choice, so why not make the best of it? I'm heading to Superfoods. And I had to go out and see the doctor. I had to pick up some prescriptions. Forced me into it. So while I was out, went ahead and ran by Superfoods too. And if you watch that video, you'll see me going through the meat counter. Here again, this was on June the 17th of this year. And as you're seeing here, and as if you watch that video, I hope you do. If you haven't already, you'll see our meat counters here at Tallahassee, Alabama, in the deep south, central Alabama, quite well stocked. Now, I don't know how they were up to that point. I just know from the comments and videos that y'all were sharing with me as I did videos that you too were seeing bare shelves when it came to meat. And when you could get it, you were getting it, and you were cutting it up, you were canning it, you were freezing it, dehydrating it, and what have you. This became such an issue all across America that another issue arose. I mean, even now, you still can't buy a deep freeze no matter what you do, unless you're willing to pay some insane high price. Not sure when chest freezers and upright freezers will get back on the market at some reasonable price. But, yes, America saw what was happening, and they started stocking up, started buying freezers, started doing other things to ensure their meat supply. Now, there was an issue, and that issue was caused by the pandemic. And here again, there were hundreds and hundreds of articles of meat packing plants being closed, being put on limited operations. Some mainstream media, and far too many social media platforms, started touting the fact that they were going to be closed permanently and would never come back. And it's because of that, mainstream media has sort of given up on that narrative. But many in social media, here on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, they just can't let it go. Nope. They're still slugging away on it. Not going to have any meat. Now, the narrative is the second wave. Here it's going to come again. And we're already down 25, 40, 50%. And because I watch many of those outlets as well to keep up with things, and I sort of bought into it in the beginning, and I made some purchases as well to ensure my meat supply was well taken care of. Now, I got totally stocked freezer. Oh yeah, 35 cubic feet, slap full. And then another, little 5 cubic foot, slap full too. But it wasn't only that. I got canned wet packed meat, I got dehydrated meat, and freeze dried meat. I pretty much think I covered the meat. And I sort of went a little overboard, considering the situation. So, I wanted to come on today and discuss meat with you and show you the actual, what happened then and what's happening now in regards to our meat. So stay with me. And let's take a look at this and see if it's real or not. So, like I said, there was an extreme problem during April, May, and June. And I mean, I'm sure many of y'all did this, and I know I did. And here we are at the Google, homepage, our favorite web browser. Not mine, but 95% of the world uses it to get all the information they need, and don't get me started on all that. But let's just look at it. And all you got to do is put in a simple search. U.S. meat shortages. Or you can word it differently. And you just click on that. And you're going to see right here. You're going to see a lot of different articles. First one here from USA Today. Meat shortages were unlikely, despite warnings from Trump. That's June 16th. Then you got, here on August 12th, corona meat shortages were avoided as production slips. Then down here on June 12th again, from CNET, is there still a meat shortage? That wasn't the case as you start looking down through these and the older ones. Smart Guide to U.S. meat shortage, Wall Street Journal. And then McDonald's executive, COVID-19 meat shortages taught us all. See, you can start to get my drift here. Sort of starting to talk about whether this is an ongoing thing or not. And then, here again on today.com, after warning of meat shortages, companies exported record amounts of meat. Yep. And then you got down here at CNBC back in May 7th. Here's why meat shortages are likely to last during the pandemic. Yep, see, you start getting these older articles, start pounding it forth. And what became a panic across all of America. Same panic that also led to the shortages somewhat, as well as shortages of freezers. Oh, and dehydrators. And pressure canners. Just to name a few. And you can just look down through here. And it's just going to be, as you go further along with your Google search, looking at older articles, yep, more and more and more about meat shortages. See, back on May 17th, there are fears the U.S. faces a coronavirus-driven meat shortage. Yep. Back on May the 1st, U.S. consumers rushed to buy meat amid concerns over COVID-19. And I'll leave it at that. You can sit here and go on Google if you haven't already. You can do this as well. Like here, April 27th, Tyson warns U.S. meat shortages as a coronavirus. And I'm not going to open up all these articles. I'm not going to read them to you. You can do your own search. Look back in time. But it's because of all these, and the reason I went to Google here and wanted to show you this in a search was, notice the dates. You don't see anything from August to September. You really don't see anything past June 26 right here. It all sort of comes a moot point as far as mainstream media goes. And it wasn't because of that I wanted to do this video. It was because several, no, I'll just take that back, far too many social media platforms, especially here on YouTube. Keep throwing it out there that our meat supply is in jeopardy, and they have many reasons. Now, the first and primarily is the COVID-19 pandemic. Then there are others that say because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's a government conspiracy to shut down our meat supply and force us into eating nothing but plant-based meat alternatives. Yep. And it was that last one that sort of broke it off in me and wanted to make me do this video. So let's take a look at a couple other sites before I get into the thick of this. That's going to show you the current situation on meat in America. So y'all, here we are. And this is an article by USA Today. And this was actually put out on June the 16th. Yeah, we're looking back in time. And it says right here, as leaders warned of U.S. meat shortages, overseas exports of pork and beef continued. Now, I read through this article, and USA Today did some good reporting. Well, that was before they tried to turn it into a political article, but that's enough said about that. And I'm just going to read through it here real quickly. As U.S. meat production plummeted in April following a rash of coronavirus outbreaks and closures at processing plants across the country, industry and political leaders sounded an alarm. Factory closures were pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. Kenneth Sullivan, CEO of Smithfield Foods, the country's largest pork producer, warned in a public message April the 6th. As closures worsened, 3 weeks later, John Tyson, chairman of Tyson Foods, put his name on a full-page ad in the Washington Post and the New York Times, warning America's food supply chain is breaking. Our plants must remain operational so that we can supply food to our families in America, Tyson said. The next day, President Donald Trump threw the industry a lifeline. He invoked the Defense Production Act to declare it was crucial to keep meat plants open and operating. He had used the authority just once before to ramp up production of personal protective equipment. The move elevated American meat processing into a privileged position. Now, here's where it gets a little political. Sorry for that. It's important that processors, beef, pork, and poultry, and food supply chain continue operating and fulfilling orders to ensure continued supply of protein for Americans, Trump wrote in his executive order. But Americans were never at risk of severe meat shortage, a USA Today investigation found, based on an analysis of U.S. Department of Agriculture data and interviews with meat industry analysis. Instead, some critics say the fear was used to justify the executive order, which provided some liability protection for the meat packing plants. It also created a uniform system of rules set by the federal government to keep plants open rather than leave the closure of meat packing plants to a patchwork of state and local health authorities. We've been very skeptical about these claims around shortages, said Ben Liston, a co-executive director of the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, which advocates for fair and sustainable food systems. I think they were able to use the idea of food shortages as leverage to get those two things. Federal data reviewed by USA Today show that although American beef and pork production did tank in a 6-week period stretching from mid-March to the executive order, now understand that was from mid-March to June 16th, or a day thereafter. That's what we all saw. That's when we saw our shelves getting slim to bare. And that's when, many people in America started stockpiling, buying the freezers and what have you, pressure canners, dehydrators. Exports of hundreds of millions of pounds of meat continued. The amount of beef and pork products exported over that time period actually exceeded the amount of production lost when compared with 2019 levels. Liston pointed out the industry also never drew down meat supplies sitting in cold storage, warehouses in the middle of the supply chain, which he said would have indicated faltering supply. And that's true. We never did drain down our cold storage supplies of meat. Never did. And that may bring up another point. Why did meat prices skyrocket? Well, it's all about taking advantage of the situation, folks. Welcome to supply and demand. Cornerstone capitalism. In fact, red meat and poultry products in cold storage grew by about 40 million pounds from March to April, reaching 2.5 billion pounds. The USDA data shows. Cold storage can tell you something. If the levels are still pretty high there, that tells you they haven't tapped into that, Lilestein said. Other experts also made a distinction between the spot shortages of meat, temporary shortage of some products in some places that spiked in early May, and a truly critical lack of protein-rich products. We're not going to run out of meat, Steve Meyer, an economist of Kearns and Associates, an agricultural commodities firm in Iowa, told USA Today in late April. But what you need, leave some for somebody else. And I think we'll all get through this okay. Of course, far too many didn't do that. Others say it's more complicated. Economists warn that a sharp curtailment of exports to shore up domestic supplies could harm long-term trade relationships and possibly backfire as companies lose profit motive to slaughter more animals. And Sarah Little, spokeswoman for the industry group, North America Meat Institute, said efforts to stabilize the industry were to ensure that a serious shortage never arrived. While there is less variety to consumers, or certain regional areas may have experienced shortages of meat, it wasn't a widespread shortage. And that's what I saw here, right here, in south central Alabama. We didn't have a shortage. Now, we didn't have some things, but for the most part, if you watch that video I did back on the 17th of June, you'll see our meat counters rather well stocked. Little said it never got to the point where we thought Americans would not have access to food. That is never something our companies would want to see, and that's why it was so important to be able to continue operations. But Tony Corbo, Senior Government Affairs Representative of Nonprofit Food and Water Watch, said he saw a disconnect between the alarming language the industry used in April and the continued exports. This incongruity between Tysons of the world and Smithfields of the world wringing their hands saying this is going to cause all kinds of disruptions to the domestic meat supply, while at the same time behind everybody's back they're exporting, Corbo said. And that's a fact. We were exporting. And like I said, far greater quantities than we did in 2019. And that's all about money too. China was paying top dollar premium for meat products, especially pork. Production drops as exports rise. In the crucial month leading up to Trump's executive order, USDA data show beef and pork production was in sharp decline from March the 20th to April the 24th. The industry produced 171 million fewer pounds of beef and pork than during the same stretch last year. But the industry exported about 636 million pounds over the same time span, nearly 4 times the deficit. That number has since grown to more than 1.3 billion pounds exported through early June. And while the U.S. does not export significant quantities of a variety of meat, products such as feet and tails that most Americans don't eat, data from the U.S. Meat Export Federation shows these products accounted for less than 25% of the weight of exports in April. Joe Schul, Vice President of Communications for the Federation, said, even among non-variety meats, some pork and beef products are more popular overseas. That includes exports of beef, short plate, a tough and fatty meat, to Japan, and pork picnic, a shoulder cut popular in Mexico. Federal export figures do not detail which cuts are being exported. Data does show that overall trends of meat production and export began to diverge by early April and grew further apart leading up to Trump's executive order. During those several weeks, production of beef and pork dipped below 2019 levels, but exports soared above the amount seen a year earlier. In the weekend in April the 23rd, industry exported 98.6 million pounds of pork overseas, the second highest total of 2020. And I did a video, back I think it was in 2019, might have been early 2020, where I told you, watch out for your pork, especially when Smithfield was sold to the Chinese. I told you, watch. Smithfield, which is our largest pork producer in America, was going to be sending a boatload of pork to China. That's why China bought it. And that's exactly what happened. Lilstein said he continued to push to export. Wasn't surprising. The nation's largest meat companies, which also include JBS and Cargill, are now global operations with products flowing to wherever the most value is to be had, he said. And that's all about, the highest price. That's the very basis of supply and demand, folks. It's not their mission to feed U.S. citizens, Lilstein said. They view the U.S. as a really important market, perhaps their most important market. But it's not our job to fill the grocery store shelves so people have enough to eat. And that's sad that American companies think that way. But then again, what you don't know is many of what we feel are American companies are no longer American companies. Hill Yang, a Tyson spokesman, said the criticism was unfair. We export reasonably and assess market dynamics, such as COVID-19's impact in the U.S. before making decisions, Yang said. Yang added that the company had been prioritizing beef and pork sales in the U.S. market. We also voluntarily curtailed beef and pork exports that fit the taste of domestic consumers to try to meet U.S. demand during this challenging time. And so there you go. According to USA Today, and I'll show you another article here in just a moment, yeah, we did for 6 weeks. We had a significant decline in demand. And that created some of what you saw in your local areas, and where your meat got slim, especially certain cuts, and in some places you slap out, like photos I showed you at the beginning of this video. But as always, I'll leave a link to this article as well as all the rest we'll be using in this video. So if you'd like to read them in their entirety and do your own research, then by all means do so. But let's flip over here and take a look at another article that explains a little bit more about the situation of meat in America. So here we are at FSN website, Food Safety News. We're going to take a look at another article. This is coronavirus meat shortage. Coronavirus meat shortages were avoided as production slips, but didn't fall all that much. In this article, look at the date, August 12, 2020. Yep, where the other one was back mid-June. Livestock and poultry production in the United States held up after the Defense Production Act put USDA in charge of making sure meat processors kept operating but in compliance with CDC and OSHA guidelines. Livestock production for April to June quarter reached 85.5% in comparison with the previous 3-month period, and poultry production was 96.29% of the previous quarter. According to the USDA's quarterly enforcement report for federal government's third quarter, which runs from April 1st to June 30th, Food Safety and Inspection Service personnel inspected 36.67 million livestock carcasses, down from second quarter's 42.90 million. So there was a decrease. Okay? The drop-off for livestock was 14.5%. Poultry production hit 2.3 billion birds during the quarter, off just 3.71% from 2.4 billion in the previous quarter. USDA was empowered to use the Defense Production Act on April 28th, after beef, hog, and poultry production facilities were all having difficulties operating because of employees were becoming infected with the coronavirus. Facility shutdowns were occurring, and media forecasters were predicting shortages of meat and poultry would be occurring just as had occurred with toilet paper a month earlier. See, remember? Media reporting. U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue said at the time that the goal was to keep meat and poultry processing facilities open during the COVID-19 national emergency while maintaining the health and safety of these heroic employees. Food industry employees were deemed essential and could not be forced off the job, as was done with non-essential employees, nor could any essential employees be forced to work. Before and after the Defense Production Act was triggered, companies used offers of higher pay and bonuses to keep production shifts filled. While meat and poultry shortages did not develop, as so many predicted, production facilities did have to close temporarily or hold back on production. And keeping plants operating with sufficient employees did come with a price. Now you are going to say, and I know many of you sent me in the comments, that in your local areas, in your food stores, you were seeing shortages. You were seeing bare shelves. Lord knows I saw the videos and pictures myself. But you can see, based on the numbers and the facts, that should have never happened. So why did it happen? Well, it all gets back to supply, demand, and driving up the prices. It's like somebody said, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. And God knows, when it comes to selling stuff, we all know. Look at the way things go after a hurricane. Everything to do, from generators to gasoline to food, water, what have you, price just skyrockets, to include lumber, building supplies. Same was true right here for meat. While the meat and poultry shortages did not develop, so many predicted, production facilities did have to close temporarily. Okay, we already went through all that. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says reports from 23 states show 16,200 meat and poultry employees were infected with the virus, and 86 died. See, 86 people died, so you, me, could have our meat. Another sign that U.S. production kept up during the quarter is that meat and poultry productions imported to the country, that's meat we bring into the country, were only about 5% up at 1.1 billion pounds. The quarterly report also includes information about specific administration, civil, and criminal enforcement actions undertaken by the FISAs, and it goes on to talk about a couple of those criminal investigations and what happened and resulted from them. Apparently there was a couple of companies that were actually processing meat, selling meat, shipping it out, that was not federally inspected, and of course that's against the law. But I'll leave this article in the description below the video too, so you can read it in its entirety. So there. Where's all this going to? Well, like I've showed you. Actually, there was no long-term meat shortage. There's not one now. And I'm going to show you another site where you can definitely see that. Because, like I said, the reason I did the video today, or been working on this one a while, is because not mainstream media, but certain social media platforms, and there are many here on YouTube, which is where you see old Mr. Tom, are still talking about past meat shortages, current meat shortages, upcoming meat shortages right now. And they're playing off on this. Many of those are bringing up the fact that it's a government conspiracy. It's the way the government, New World Order, or whoever is forcing us by closing down our meat packing processors and producers, so we'll all be forced to eat plant-based meat. But like these last two articles have showed you, yeah, for 6 weeks or so, there was a reduction in capacity. There were spot shortages. There were places where there wasn't meat. And like all of y'all saw, and I saw this some too, there were higher prices. But the higher prices goes back, since I've done gave you the data and the articles to show you that the meat supply was never in jeopardy. The very fact we didn't draw down our cold storage is proof to that. And the USDA monitors that every week. And you can go up on their site and look at it if that's what you want to do. But here again, that gets back to don't let a perfectly good crisis go to waste. Just like we don't let a natural disaster, regardless of what it is, anything involved to do with helping you out after one, always goes up 100, 200, 300 or more percent. It gets back to that supply and demand thing. But let's take a look at another website that shows the current condition of meat processing in America. So, here we are at Meat Plus Poultry website. It's an industry website reporting on the meat and poultry industry. And you can see right here, COVID-19 meat plant closures. And they got a little sign up here on the window, "We are closed due to coronavirus quarantine. Sorry for the inconvenience." And the article goes down here. Kansas City, Missouri, meatpoultry.com will be tracking the state of plant closures throughout the United States and Canada. The map below will be updated as needed. If you know of a closure that should be added or updated, please contact Ryan McCarthy. And that's why we're here. You see this little map right here, the U.S.? Yep. Now, let me say something. This particular map right here, you see all that red on there? Look down here to the left in the legend. Red means closed. And you're going to think, oh my God, Mr. Tom, look at all them closures. Woo! Of course, orange means limited operations. And, the bluish gray means reopened. And this was updated on September the 7th. And it gets updated about every week, 2 weeks, all depending on what they want to do, if they get any more information. And it hasn't been here now, in a week or so, updated. That's because things haven't changed. But this particular map has been misused a lot, because it'll show you this right here. It'll show you all this red. Oh my God, look at this. I mean, look at all these plants that are closed. Look at Iowa. They've got +6 closed. My God. But this is what they don't do. Let me show you a little trick here, okay? See those little buttons right up here, plus and minus? Go on in. You just expand that. We're going to be looking at Iowa that said a +6 closed. We're going to expand it. We're going to keep expanding it. Oh. What happened to the red? Well, at some point in time there was 6 meat plants closed. But now, this is the status of them. We're just going to look at these orange ones here that say limited operations. April 21st. 16 employees of Prestige Foods of Iowa tested positive for COVID-19 in Eagle Grove, Iowa. And apparently as of September the 7th, this plant's still run under limited operations. What that is, who knows? Is that 50%, 25, 85? Who knows? Then here we got another one. May the 7th, Tyson Foods announced plans to reopen operations at its largest pork processing plant located in Waterloo, Iowa. The company closed April the 22nd. Now it closed, and that was one of those +6 red, but now it is now running under limited operations. And then the bluish gray ones here, you can look at, they've been all reopened. My point being, if you use these little buttons and go down and see, you can see actually the status of whatever meat production facility in the states that had closed, what their status is now. And we'll go over to one that I just saw, about a week and a half back. And it's right over here in California. We'll click on it, and this one was brought up in a very well-known YouTube channel's video, and he used this plant to foster the idea and conspiracy. Here again, the government's shutting down our meat plants to push the agenda and the narrative to force us into eating plant-based meat. Now here it says, Foster Farms and local health officials in Livingston, California closed its poultry processing complex following a COVID-19 outbreak. And it was closed. It closed from September the 1st to the 7th. Where then, it came back up and now is in limited operations. Here again, I don't know. Is that 25%, 50, 75? Who knows? But it's back up and running. And if you go ahead and scroll into any of these states, like we'll go down here to Texas, okay? Which shows +2. There were 2 closed. And we'll just keep going in. See? Now they turn into the bluish gray, which means reopened. And you can see when they closed, May the 8th. Quality Sausage Company resumed its beef pork poultry plant in Dallas, Texas. May the 4th, Don Miguel Foods, LLC, subsidiary of Megamex Foods Incorporated, reopened its Mexican prepared food processing plants in Dallas. It was closed on April the 20th. So this particular map gives you the status of what had been closed, and as of September 7th is its current condition. And like I said, they'll update this as required or as information comes in. So far it hasn't. And after a thorough search all over the internet, not just using Google, but I use DuckDuckGo, I use another one that many of y'all have never heard of. And I'm not going to really beleaguer it because I don't want people to know about it, but that's Web Crawler. This goes all the way back into the 90s. Little unknown search engine. To get the truth out. And I can't find no new closures of meat packing or processing plants in America. No, not a single one. And then, something else that proves my point, that not only is meat coming back, and we're just fine, now granted, you may be seeing extremely higher prices in your area. I'm just showing you, it's not because plants are closed. It's not because there was ever a shortage, because our cold storage never did. It's because people are taking advantage of the situation. That may be your local grocery. That may be Walmart, Publix, Safeway. They're taking advantage of a perceived situation that mainstream media helped develop early on throughout April, May, mid-June. But social media, many platforms, whether it be homesteaders, preppers, people who are touting the New World Order, government conspiracies to force us to consume plant-based meats, to people who are all about the grand solar minimum or asteroids or what have you, are promoting. But the facts are here. But something else you got to ask yourself, people. Why haven't those sites showed you the ones that I've showed you? And I got more. Oh, they come after old Mr. Tom. Old Mr. Tom got way more than this. And he can make them really look stupid. Pardon my language. And like always, this video about me. And the fact that it's not nothing for you to be worried about currently. And doesn't like it's going to be nothing to worry about here in the near future. They will come after me on this one, just like they did when I released the one telling you the truth about EMPs. Oh yeah. Why? Because even though my channel ain't very big, we're only at 13,400 and I think 53 subscribers. I love each and every one of you. I don't have a whole lot of impact. YouTube doesn't share my videos. For one basic reason. YouTube don't make a penny off my channel because I'm not monetized. And all these other channels that are promoting the junk to drive you with fear and panic, oh, they are. YouTube don't care. They don't care at all. It's all about the money, folks. We all know that. If you want to boil life down to one single word that controls how the masses react, how the wealthy take control of the peoples, to governments, to what have you, it always comes down to that one word. Money. Always. And that's one thing I want you to watch. And ask yourself, when these people are bringing up these issues, yeah, maybe you don't have the time to do your own research. Maybe you don't have the time to do in-depth investigating and analysis of your situation. But ask yourself when you're watching them, just a few questions. It's the same thing I ask myself. What do they have to gain? And many times it's easy. Well, first of all, like I told you before, fear and panic, increased views, increased subscribers, which means more advertising revenue. Well, that's one. The other is whatever they're selling. What is that? Is that seeds? So you make sure you always got seeds. And I'm going to have a video about that too, because that's starting to irritate me as well. Do they have survival foods? Whether that be dehydrated or freeze-dried, are they promoting that? Do they have affiliate links? Is there some way they're profiting? These are the things I ask myself when I'm watching their videos, when I'm reading their Instagram blogs, looking at their websites. I always ask myself this: what have they got to gain? Now, I'm going to end this video with something that I saw disappear during COVID-19. And it started end of March, went through April, all of May, and first week or two of June. But around mid-June, started coming back. And one of those things I saw disappear, and this is what sort of got me panicked too, and where I sort of bought off on this old meat shortage thing, is I saw ads, sales ads for grocery stores disappear. And as we all know, one of the top things all of our grocery stores advertise in their sales is meat. And then other staple items. Canned goods is another one. Boxed meals. But always, top of the page is meat. And I'm going to be showing you several of my local outlets. Many of y'all recognize them, because I was there, put y'all in the buggy, and we walked on through and shopped together. So, I'm going to leave y'all now. Let you watch those ads, listen to a little bit of fine music, and understand, I do appreciate each and every one of you. I don't ever ask y'all to even like or subscribe, or even share the videos. You see, to me, that's all a personal choice. If you like it, you give me a thumbs up. If you don't, you give me a thumbs down. Personal choice. If you feel it's important information that maybe your family and loved ones need to know, you'll share it. There ain't no need for me to ask y'all. At the beginning of the videos, in the middle of the videos, or have stuff flashing at you. I leave it all up to y'all. And I will continue to do that. Now I hope you do appreciate these types of videos. This is what I do for myself, my family, friends, and loved ones, my grandchildren, my kids. To stay on top of things, analyze what's out there. And the little bit I showed you right now is just 3 different sites. But see, I got to pare it down some. I have so many more that I keep in reserve. I got them bookmarked. I got them in folders. In case those out there that are pushing this crap come after old Mr. Tom. Because I can come back with a video that with this one will make them look even far more silly than they already are. So y'all enjoy the ads you're about to see. And I do hope all of y'all are taking care, staying safe. And I hope God blesses each and every one of you, your families, and your loved ones. Till next we meet. Goodbye for now.